Teaching IELTS students, I noticed a pattern that happened again and again. The students who didn't get the band score they were aiming for weren't bad at English. The problem wasn't their language ability. And that's what was so frustrating. It was because they didn't understand the game they were playing. They walked into that room and they performed. They tried to sound impressive. They tried to sound fluent. They tried to sound like a native speaker. And in doing so, they completely missed what the examiner was actually sitting there listening for. IELTS is a British exam and it follows very specific, very logical patterns. Once you understand those patterns, once you see the map, the whole thing changes. So today, I'm going to show you that map. There are exactly 4 things your examiner is marking you on. 4, that's it. Each one is worth 25% of your score, and each one rewards very specific things. Let's go through them one by one, and for each one, I'll give you a concrete tip you can actually use to smash it. Chapter 1, the flow factor. The biggest mistake I see students make with fluency is thinking it means speed. It doesn't. Your examiner is not timing how fast you can talk. What they are listening for, and this is something straight from the examiner's handbook, is something called undue hesitation. And there's a really important difference here that most students never hear about. Hesitating because you've lost your train of thought, that lowers your score. But hesitating because you're genuinely thinking about something complex, because you're choosing the right word, or considering a difficult idea, that's completely natural, and a good examiner knows the difference. The problem is the sound you make while you hesitate. Tells the examiner your language has stalled. So instead, you replace those sounds with what are called fillers, and these are just wonderful. Phrases like, let me see, or that's a tricky one, or how can I put this, buy you exactly the same amount of time, but they sound considered rather than lost. That is a really small change with a really significant impact on how you come across. A practical way to build this habit is to practice answering questions out loud every single day, not just in your head. Your brain can feel very fluent when it's thinking in silence. But the moment you have to actually produce the words in real time in front of someone, that's a completely different skill. So practice speaking. Record yourself answering questions about your daily life, your opinions, your plans. And when you hesitate, train yourself to reach for a filler instead of going quiet. I know you may feel like a crazy person talking to yourself, but what am I doing right now? The second part, coherence, is about making sure your examiner can follow your logic. Use linking words. However, consequently, what I mean by that is these act like signposts. They show the examiner that your ideas are connected and moving forward, not just floating around hoping for the best. I'd really recommend sitting down and learning a solid bank of these before your test. Not just the obvious ones like but and so, but the ones that show a bit more sophistication. Words like nevertheless, as a result, having said that, and To elaborate on that are the kinds of connectors that make your speech sound structured and considered. Make them feel natural before the test, and they'll come out naturally in it. Chapter 2, Precision over Complexity. This one has a trap in it, and I want you to avoid it. When students hear lexical resource, they think it means use impressive, complicated vocabulary. So they go away, learn a list of advanced words, and drop them into their answers regardless of whether they quite fit. And this, I promise you, is worse than using simple words correctly. Far worse. What examiners are actually looking for is idiomatic language and topic-specific vocabulary used naturally. It's not the size of the word, it's whether you're using it the way a real speaker would. A word that's used in the wrong context or paired with the wrong verb, what's called a collocation error, is a red flag. Do a decision instead of make a decision. Strong rain instead of heavy rain. These things matter enormously, and the best way to avoid them is to learn vocabulary in phrases rather than in isolation. Don't just learn the word decision. Learn make a decision, reach a decision, a difficult decision. That way, when it comes out in the test, it comes out correctly and naturally. And here's the tip I love the most in this whole category. And this is genuinely a Band 7 trait that most students never think to practice. If you forget a word in the test, your instinct is probably to stop, go silent, and desperately try to remember it. Don't. That pause is what costs you marks, not the forgotten word itself. Instead, describe it, keep talking, and work around it. If you can't remember the word commute, you say, the journey I make every day to get to work. If you can't remember procrastinate, you say, when you keep putting something off, even though you know you should do it. You're communicating the same idea, you've just taken a different route to get there. This is called lexical flexibility, and it's exactly what examiners are trained to reward at Band 7 and above. It tells them you can navigate the language rather than just recite a list of words you memorized. A student who fills the gap confidently sounds far more capable than one who goes silent trying to retrieve the perfect word. The way I always explain it to my students is this. Think of your vocabulary like a city. A Band 5 speaker only knows one road to get somewhere, and if that road is blocked, they're stuck. A Band 7 speaker knows 3 different routes. Lexical flexibility is just knowing your way around. Chapter 3, the range trap. Here's the thing about grammar that most students get completely wrong. You can speak in perfect, flawless, 100% accurate, simple sentences for the entire test, and you will still not get above a Band 6. Because the clue is in the name. It's not just accuracy, it's range. Your examiner needs to hear a variety of structures to give you a 7 or above, and that means you have to be deliberate about it. I think it's really important to use what I call the grammar triple threat. In every part of the speaking test, aim to use at least one conditional. If I had the opportunity, I would. One relative clause, which is something I find really interesting because, and one present perfect. I've been living there for about 3 years now. These 3 structures alone demonstrate the kind of grammatical range that pushes your score up. You don't need to use every tense you've ever learnt. You just need to show range, and these 3 do that beautifully. The key is to build these structures into your preparation so deliberately that they feel automatic on the day. When you're practicing at home, challenge yourself to include all 3 in every answer, even if it feels a little forced at first. This is because in the test, when your nerves are up, you will default to whatever feels most comfortable. Make the complex structures comfortable, and they'll be there when you need them. Chapter 4, The Music of English. Let me be very clear about something, because this causes so much unnecessary anxiety. Your accent does not matter. I mean that. IELTS examiners are explicitly trained not to penalise regional or national accents, as long as your speech can be understood. What they are listening for is something different entirely: intonation. Think of it this way. English has a kind of music to it. We stress certain words, usually the nouns and the verbs, the content words. And we group our ideas together in what are called chunks, with natural pauses between them. When students are nervous, they tend to flatten everything out and speak in one long, even stream, like a robot reading a grocery list. And it becomes genuinely difficult to follow. So, practice stressing your key words and practice pausing between ideas. Not because it sounds more native, but because it makes you easier to listen to. And an examiner who can follow you easily is an examiner who's going to mark you fairly. The single best way to train this is something called shadowing. And if you haven't heard of it, it is exactly what it sounds like. You listen to a native speaker and you repeat what they say, almost simultaneously, mimicking not just the words, but the rhythm, the stress, the pauses. It rewires the way your brain and mouth work together in English, and it is genuinely one of the most effective pronunciation tools out there. I have a shadowing lesson I'd love for you to try. You can find it up here or in the description. So there you have it, the full examiner's map. 4 criteria, each worth exactly the same, and each one completely learnable once you know what you're being marked on. The students I've seen transform their scores aren't always the ones who studied the hardest. They're the ones who knew how to play the game. For more English tips delivered straight to your inbox, don't forget to subscribe to my free newsletter. The link is in the description. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.